Hi there. Welcome back to Construction Executives Live. I am your host, Jeremy Owens, owner and founder of US Construction Zone and Three Generations Improvements in cloudy, rainy, windy Northern California. If you watch our news out here, we're probably not going to make it through the night. So this might be the last time you see me. I'm sure the rest of you across the nation dealing with weather laugh at us in Northern California, as you should. But we have wind at 35 and wind and rain and maybe a little bit of flooding, and our life is essentially over. So say a quick prayer for us, please. But hey, welcome back. Happy New Year to everybody. A couple things before we get started. I think last time I mentioned it's really cool for US Construction Zone to be able to connect executives in the construction space, but we really are pivoting in that we not only want to connect you all, we want to help you with your everyday needs. And whether that is business related or whether that's personal related, whatever that may be, we want to be there for you. With that being said, I know a lot of us in the new year, we start with our goals, right? What do you want to be different, and how do we want to improve? And for me personally, I have one word that I want to really focus on this year, and it's habit. I want to create better habits for myself, for my team. And I know you're probably thinking about this first week back, trying to figure out, what we're going to do differently in the new year. And that's one thing that we're definitely going to focus on. But the other thing I'm hearing a lot of from my friends and family and peers is that life is hard. And I get this, whether that's a diagnosis or a loss of loved ones this last year. Like I mentioned last time, the holiday season is not always easy for people, and I recognize that. So I want to be able to create a more robust network, not a LinkedIn network. I want to create a network where we can rely on each other for things with a diagnosis or a loss of a loved one or business problems or loss of a business. If we're in need of help, if we're in need of a job, if we're in need of business help, I want to be able to pick each other up. And so I challenge you, I challenge myself this year to really focus on that this year. The other thing too, talking about habits and talking about sidestepping the games of life is we do have Phillip Lanos coming on here in a second. He's having some login issues, of course, but he'll be in a second. And just thinking about that is his book is called Sidestepping the Game of Life, and it's very true in the new year, but very true for what we're going through, coming out of the pandemic and coming out of there's so many just seems like crazy things. I know a lot of you deal with natural disasters, and you think about the Buffalo thing, and you think about not only Buffalo Snow, the Buffalo football player. There's a lot going on in life, and we need to figure out some ways to sidestep the things that come at us. And I think that the first and foremost that needs to be people. We need to pick each other up. It can't be just ourselves. Sometimes we're going to need more help. So with that being said, I want to get into Philip. Let's see where he's at here. Let's see if Philip's on, and he's having webcam and issues. And you know I, live TV, we've talked about this. We have some weather issues. We're supposed to get some power outages here in Folsom today. So something happens, I do apologize, but I just want you to know I'm trying my best to keep things moving and keep things on the right. And just to talk a little bit about what we're doing here in the new year with the U.S. Construction Zone. We have a couple really cool features coming at you, and I want to keep some of them a secret, and some of them I'll let out a cat out of the bag a little bit. But we want to be able to not only be connecting people, but also um, help you guys with those connection points, whether that's a reference or whether that's education or what have you. But we do have Philip here, so let's get started with Philip. Philip Lanos is currently the host of Strategic Advisory Board's War Room Roundtable podcast series, a show currently ranked in the top 1% globally of podcast shows in business. Philip is also CEO of Own the Rhythm, a consulting agency that helps entrepreneurs and CEOs' brands look and sound better, much like a personal brand optimization. Phillip has over 10 years in the digital marketing, PR, communication space and authored a book named Pushing Past the Norm, a collection of frameworks and mental models to unlock your potential. Please help me welcome Phillip Lanos. Phillip, how are you doing, bud?
Hey, can you guys hear me all right? I'm
Yeah,
having
I can hear
technical.
you, man.
Oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah, I can hear you just fine, man. Good to see you, and happy New Year to you. Thanks for being here. And I know it's been some challenging times for you and I both. This season of life has been a little bit tough, but I appreciate you taking the time. Not feeling well, and we all know what that's like. But I just wanted to come out the gate and say, hey, man, I'm here for you. I'm sorry that you're not feeling yourself, and to take the time out of not feeling like yourself and join us. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I think anytime anyone invites you to have a conversation, should be a yes. Regardless of how you're feeling.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, man. And so tell me a little bit about your upbringing. I know that you actually had a father that grew up in construction.
So, pretty standard issue, right? Mexico, as they say,
Uh-huh.
and he landed in was construction. So somehow picked it up. I think it's in the genetics. I don't know. I think we're born to come out of the womb, and cool in the sense that he loved taking he had to, and so some new house with a dog, if you will, a taco truck out. It was a great experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, and I just got a note that some people are having a hard time hearing you, and it's just a little bit of connection issues, but I hear you just fine. So just want to let you know we might fight for that a little bit. So please tell me a little bit about your family upbringing. I know there was a moment in your life that you said I need to take control of it. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, it was almost immediate instruction forever. Because so I hit 8 years old. This is all happening. I saw a man who was and construction and heavy metal. He came home one day, took off his knee pads, and construction muck was like crust. Crust. You could just tell he drank a lot too, to deeper and all that. And
Mm,
so I think it took a toll on his body. A walker to a wheelchair really fast within a matter, and then eventually within the year. I still am I still having audio issues?
yeah, just a few, but you're okay. Keep plugging away. I can hear you all right.
Okay, yeah, and then within the year, atrophic lateral sclerosis, also known
Uh,
as ALS. And from there, it was a matter of like, I can't take care of you anymore. From uncle to uncle, and every aunt, there's another mouth to feed, and
yeah.
and mom who I barely knew, and that was a different story.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, with all of those things growing up, I mean, at a young age, obviously that's going to define you in a lot of ways. It's going to, stress you out. You're going to be in a lot of issues. Is that kind of what inspired you to write the book, Pushing Past the Norm, or what inspired you to write that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just frozen. I want to make sure I'm still there. But yeah, exactly what inspired it. What happened was from being sent to my mother's is a downhill spiral in a lot of ways, and myself because she herself was a runaway.
Mm,
What have you, and so she was always on some kind of and uh, going from one man to them in the hopes that they could have a family. That not working. That was involved with gangs. And she's like all American, like so.
geez.
It's just easy to understand what happened. So me living out sick the skateboard was my sword as a kid. By the time I became a full blown adult and had gone into and moved to New York for a while, I realized that life was reading. When I was about 14, it read the Four Agreements and Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People before I
Yeah.
entered high school. So yeah, I would want to write something like that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I just got for Christmas. I just got the Four Agreements. Tell me a little bit about that one because that one's obviously I hear super powerful and I can't wait to get into it.
You know, the four agreements that it outlines are. And I'm just checking in, just making sure because my image looks frozen. Yeah.
Yeah, I see your image okay. It's kind of a little choppy on the sound. Um, but I don't know if there's anything necessarily you could do with it. It's
Huh.
probably I don't know if it's a
I don't
connection issue
know
or
if it's the mic. I can sure. I can switch over to headphones if that much. Um, if it is, I'm respectful of the audience, so they're not having to deal with that. I
yeah,
can
no,
check it.
I hear you, man. Whatever you think is working. I don't know what the issue is, you know what I mean? Like it's that's welcome to live TV, right? Where you have like whether that's a connection issue or whether that's a mic issue, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's so weird. To this morning has been insane. If it's right now, so if it's not incredibly choppy, then it's not necessary. But coming back to what we were saying, basically, the Four Agreements is a good book. The four I took away from it was the idea that's floating around in your head, saying all those crazy things. That's listening,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was that let me let go of anger and suffering and all after reading that.
Well, very cool. Like at a young age though, that's heavy, man. I mean, most people aren't reading that book until they're in a professional life, right? So to be handed that book at a young age, that's kind of unique, right? I mean, who gave you that book, I guess?
Yeah, so and at the time it was just him and I living together 19. So he wasn't
Yeah,
much older than me and I was 14. To be frank, we had just smoked young and experimenting and he was off playing video games and I love video games. He's like, I don't know. Uh, my dad gave me the notes. It's whatever. If you want, try reading. And I
yeah.
was like, and I just off chance picked it up.
Wow, wow. And you're an avid book reader ever since, right?
Yeah, yeah. I love reading. Still
Yeah,
think though that no matter how many new books I get, there's that actually changed my life, and others are just interesting reads. I haven't written in a very long time, and I include mine. I feel like I wrote it, and that was I meant well with it to hopefully help young kids. I paid for
yeah.
an editor, everything, and it just wasn't
Oh,
done well.
yeah.
You can't hire good help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Well, I think that we're similar in a lot of ways, and that we have a tough time sitting still, both physically and mentally. You know, I heard you discuss, that you're really going to focus, and I know this year especially, you're going to focus on optimizing yourself. What does that look like? How are you doing that?
Can you hear me? Okay.
It's still a
Yeah.
little bit choppy.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to log out, log back in real quick, and I'll just fill a couple moments here.
Yeah. I'll try to.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks, guys. I know there's technical difficulties everywhere. I want to be able to for you guys to hear them. Personally, I've had a lot of great conversations with Philip, and just so you know, he's I told you he's going through some health things, and I'll let you guys talk with that about him personally. But he is really an inspiring story. He has over 2,000 podcast interviews. He has contacts everywhere, and he's got a network of of thousands of people that he can rely on. And part of the reason he does have that is that he's constantly interviewing, and he's sought after from not only a podcaster but a host. Like, so he helps not only host podcasts but interview really well. So I wanted to get him on this side of the camera for a change because I think he has a lot to say. His book is awesome. His story is very inspirational, and it's just one of those stories that you're just like, wow, that's someone who, I hate the cliche, pulled himself up the bootstrap, but that's kind of what he did. Is he had a moment of time of like, hey, I'm at a crossroads, and he chose the right path. And he's been, like I said, he's been very inspirational to me. He's put me in touch with some great people in the mental health space. And so he's one of those people I want to be like, where you come to them and then they say, I have someone for you. And then what they do is they in turn introduce you to people that you need at that moment. And he's done that to me already several times. And that is really a rewarding thing. And I hope to be that for you guys as well. I know that I have done that for some of you, and that, you come to me and say, hey, I have this current need, and I do my best to find a reference for you. But that is definitely what we're trying to do with US Construction Zone this year. And so, hopefully he comes back with those technical difficulties, and is able to keep moving, because, like I said, he's got a lot to say. And it's an unusual time of life for him. I think, we're going to get a little bit more into mental health here, talking with him about that, as well as myself. We all go through things, and currently he's going through things right now. So it is kind of a unique time to be talking to him, and we've had to reschedule with him previously this last year, so he didn't want to reschedule again. And so I appreciate him trying to fight through that, and you know talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on, not only in his life, but what he's working towards this next year. And I encourage you to, in the chat, please leave a note, a question. If you have a quick question for me or him, please do so. Thank you, Corey, for being active on there. There's a couple other people that have chimed in, and we're currently streaming in a lot of different resources. We have oh, here we go. Let's try him. Hey, bud, is that better? I can see you. Can I hear you? Are you muted?
Three.
Let's see. Yeah, I
Testing.
can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that's better. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, thank you, man. No, that does sound better. And, I wanted to talk about that the optimizing piece. Like, we're both a little, maybe borderline ADHD, whatever you guys want to call us. Fine, I'll take it. But like, how do you, out of that busy mind, how do you optimize yourself, especially nowadays?
Relation to like work like branding, or
Yeah,
what are you referring
yeah.
to?
I mean, you kind of mentioned to me a couple times that you're both physically and mentally, you have a hard time sitting still, and you're trying to help not only optimize yourself, but to optimize others. So I guess, what does that look like for you? And then how would you coach up other people to do the same?
Yeah, I think it starts with externalizing. So I tell myself, as long as something remains a subject in my mind, I'm thinking about it, it remains subjective, meaning can influence it.
Yeah.
But the minute I put it down on paper, or preferably for me, or something else, right? You externalize something. Now you can be objective about it, and to see where it fits, right? So that's like the fun behind how I optimize things. I feel like it's like puzzle pieces on the table before you can put the puzzle together.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, I was telling the audience that you have over 2,000 interviews, and that you've been podcasting for years, and obviously you learn a lot from those people. You get enlightened. You talk to entrepreneurs and leaders, and I guess, is there a common theme that you see with all those people you interview, or are you left inspired all the time, or what is that like for you?
Yeah. One thing's for sure: venture capitalists, entrepreneurs that did, and you'd be surprised at how many aren't that good when they're terrible. They're just uncomfortable with the idea, because it's so. If you're thinking of podcasting and going out there on it because you think you might not be good. Believe it or not, among many people who, it's rare as the person who 1,000 and I'm a mess with my technology today, right? Don't blow it out of proportion. You've clearly throwing tomatoes at me for all my tech issues today. But what the ones who are strong and solid leaders, the ones who are strong and solid leaders, to explain the thinking behind their decision making is with the best profits, the happiest teams, and great clients. They all have this innate. I'm going to frame the conversation before I bring it up. In doing so, we're now both going to have a shared sort of Gus before I make this
Right.
big decision, whether it's with the client. We're about to let somebody go, but I've already gotten their permission to do this. But I want to make sure that I understand being, short-sighted. I personally believe I've seen one here as part of the family. So I'd like to know some of your thoughts further, whether it's one-to-one with someone or what have you. So perspective, and again, you've shared the thinking behind your transparency seems to be what the most CEO.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was saying too that you spent so much time as the interviewer, and obviously you learn a lot from that, right? You learn a lot about that other person. But I guess now, maybe this season of your life, it seems like you're in a good position to maybe switch that around and be interviewed more often. And I guess, what does that look like for you? What do you want to talk about? What's inspiring you now? Like if you could be just interviewed all the time, what topic would it be?
I actually think there's a guy named, if you haven't heard of him, he's got a book. The late Sir Ken Robinson now, I think he passed away just before. But his book was about helping people find out what my life has been an amalgamation of tactics. So a lot of what I've done and a lot of necessity that it was out of me wanting to be an actor. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be English in Korea. I even learned how to read and write in Korean. Happiest moments of my life was when I was ran just for the sake of knowing I was doing it because I loved it. The way I got caught up in making sure I could pay all the bills, like every cost, all that aside, and I feel like that is, I've put on weight. I'm not. There's a lot of things. I don't sleep well. There's a lot of things from the fact that I don't make time for things. Any entrepreneur I've spoken to, if you're not prepared and you don't enjoy it, that's going to be 10 years of hell. Love to talk about getting people back to that place. Able to make time for that thing that really gets you going.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it too. There's a lot of people who want to enter this space, whether that's a podcast or be a thought leader, influencer in their industry. And you talked about really learning to be an active listener, and you kind of mentioned a little bit, but what does that look like to you? Because I think that's something that everyone needs a bigger slice of in their life, is how do you actively listen?
Active, there's 3 levels to it, right? There's someone, or you're having a conversation with someone. First and foremost, better advice than my own is in the 7th level, Stephen Covey talks about seeking to be understood. So if I would have spent my entire time thinking, okay, what am I going to say next? What am I going to? I'm not even trying to ask me, right? So again, coming back, turn that voice off for a second, right? Yeah. Let stuff in first and foremost. But otherwise, the way to look at it as a framework, there's actively accepting, actively confused. And if you check in with yourself, and I agree with it, an agreement has been made. Do I reject? Because I have a prior agreement that I feel, am I actively confused by this? Yes. What question can I ask? What do you mean by that? Or, can you clarify that? And modes of active listening.
Yeah, totally understand that. Yeah, so I mean, with this season, I kind of want to end with this one with you is that, you have a YouTube channel, you have kind of a lot of irons in the fire, maybe some things you're trying to figure out how to narrow down this year. So I guess, what do you want to focus on in 2023? Whether is that your goal, or what job, or how can we help you get to where you want to go this next year?
I appreciate that. I actually am looking to some being. I've been freelance, I guess you could say. When I don't have like people in person that I hired, just I don't personally consider it. I don't think it's the same business where you've got
Yeah,
payroll that you got to meet. Because I help people run their payroll on occasion. Freelance. I call a spade, right? So I'm looking to move away from a marketing agency in New York. That's really where I picked up a lot of, and I'm thinking of going back in that direction. Completely disrupts the marketing industry as a whole. Go back in and see what I can do as a director, and maybe show them how to leverage technologies that are about to disrupt the ecosystem and their
yeah,
comfy little cushy.
yeah. No
That's
doubt,
what
no doubt.
I'm interested in.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you, Philip. And I want to give you the chance to, like I said, to ask me a few questions about my upbringing in construction and kind of where I'm headed to. So feel free to fire away.
All right, switching the hot seat over to
Yeah.
you. So, Jeremy, your upbringing in construction, what was that like? Who you are today, specifically? Is there a moment you were, wow, I'm really in a construction zone?
Yeah. No, thank you. So, I mean, it's interesting for me because I'm third generation in remodeling. My grandpa started in 1956 and my dad in the 70s. And I remember going on sales calls with my dad when I was 5 years old. So I was around sales, I was around job sites, I was around measuring, and it was such a different time, right? I mean, in the 70s, you had to roll up to a payphone and have quarters in your pocket. You had to have a map. Like there's just so many things that when you talk to people about it, they're like, "Wow, I don't remember that." And like, so it's really cool because it kind of formed like this different background for me, and networking was a part of it because networking back then was face to face. You didn't have Zoom, you didn't have social media, so you want to network with people, then you skin to skin, or you call them on the phone. You had a Rolodex, and you basically that's how you connected. And it was a strange time, but it was a really cool upbringing for me in construction. And I went to college and got the degree thing, and soon found out just need to stick with what I'm good at and what's in my blood, and that was remodeling and construction.
You began to find the inspiration to actually, and now is this an offshoot of like or did you just take over the entire family business?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah, we moved as a family from Spokane, Washington. That was Owens Western Builders, and we moved to Folsom, California in the late 80s. So that's when kind of things pivoted from Owens Western Builders to Three Generations Improvements. And my dad and I kind of teamed up, and he knew what he was good at. He was good at sales and being in the field, and he knew that I was good at ownership and operations and marketing. So he kind of handed me the keys at a young age, and I've learned things and stumbled sometimes, but I've relied on a network of people, and I've relied on family. And so it's been cool in that he didn't bring ego to the table. He brought grace and forgiveness, and so like that's the reason that our family business works, is that he doesn't have ego involved, where most people in construction, me included, have a little slice of ego that I gotta sometimes check at the door, right? So, yeah, so it was cool that he was giving me the keys at a young age.
I really love that you said the idea of we could have glazed over, but for me, I think is very about your ability to rely on family and rely on. For example, Stephen Covey talks the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Dependence being the pinnacle of human excellence, not independent people, myself included, run around being independent. Where did you learn this interdependence? Is it related to ego? Feeling okay to ask for your network for help?
That's a good question. I think actually it was a learned thing from my dad at a young age, that seeing him network, he would get into marketing organizations and networking organizations. We'd go to conferences as a kid. So like seeing him do it himself and seeing him rely on it really kind of helped me go like, okay, it's not, it's nothing to fear. It's nothing to, it's not a weak thing. It's actually very powerful because, you're stronger together, the synergistic aspect of life. Like, hey, that guy has skills I don't have. He has contacts I don't have. Why not work together? And I mean, now, and that's how U.S. Construction Zone was formed. I was at a conference, and it was a roundtable conference. And then at the end, we were all exchanging business cards as you do, kind of knowing that you weren't really going to probably stay in touch. But a gentleman from Nashville said, I wish there was a better way for us to kind of chat as a group through the year and kick around ideas like this. And that kind of jogged around in my mind a little bit. And then the pandemic hit and we lost our connection points. And that's really when I started ramping up, building out U.S. Construction Zone. So it really was the idea of, I want to be able to connect and talk with people anytime I want, but of the same like mind, executives, managers. There's social media everywhere, but it's very distracting and negative a lot of times. So I wanted really to create a positive environment.
And this environment was like a in-person meeting, a virtual meeting.
Yeah, so the connection point is it'll look and feel a lot like a LinkedIn, but it's just construction executives. So it has, a way for you to connect, ask questions, get daily industry news. So that connection piece was the first part. And then what it's really pivoting into is all these other things like, hey, resources, education, live show, podcasts. We have some mental health things and some other things that are kind of pivoting, and that now I want to be able to create some resources and point my members in the right direction, whatever their pain point is.
I met you through a podcast where I was interviewing, talking to you. You quite a few of these as you get out there. Have you any connections and realized, oh, some of these things are pretty could have a similar background from?
Yeah, I would say in all the podcasts I'm on podcasts, I do podcasts, so there's a common theme. The common theme I see in construction industry is that there is a desire for connection, and whether we know it or want to admit it or not, especially during the pandemic, I realized how many people were coming at me and asking for Zoom meetings, and I said yes to almost all of them. I just said yes. Wow. Because it was just like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to get out of it. It kind of seems salesy, but in the end, it was always something valuable I took from it, whether that is another person to talk to, or whether that is, a sign up on my website, or whatever it may have been. I just said yes. It was like the year of saying yes. And it was like the movie, I think it's called Yes Man, with Jim Carrey. I felt like doing that. I didn't say yes to staying up all night, but similar things. And I just said yes. And what I found was that we were missing connection. I found that people had a life that was hard. I found mental health issues. I found some issues that, beyond the day-to-day struggle of business, that people had a life that they were kind of willing to talk about with me. I was mainly because I was being vulnerable with them first. So I opened up the door for them to talk about their life, and they started talking. And I was like, damn, dude, this is a missing piece in our industry, is that we don't talk.
It's funny you say that, because when that it's it's both gender zone, right? And just in general, when you look, there's a predominant image of like masculine shows up, gets the job
Yeah.
done, and
Yeah.
that's having that frank conversation about you're not doing too well, neither am I. That's this theme from the beginning of the conversation here of being interdependent and have up the door for people, creating the platform that in your work and in your life that I think is there, man. You've already in the making. So what has that been like for you? Is he only in a state of lack of open discussions?
Yeah, I would say the pivot for me personally in the mental health space is that I got the stat from, I took some Zoom calls with some mental health professionals that cater to the construction industry, and I was shocked to find out they were number two in suicide rates out of all occupational
Whoa.
industries. So we were like,
Wow.
that was new to me, and like that wasn't something I was reading yet. So it was like going like, wow, that's kind of a dirty little secret that construction has hid for a long time. And hearing them say, yeah, you guys have been for number two for many years, and I'm like, wow, like, so yeah, it's the tough guy complex. It's still a male dominated industry. It's you don't open up. You're not vulnerable. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't really even ask people about their lives. You just work hard and you shut up and you put your head down. So like it was very surfacey for many years. And growing up in construction, I have some experience with this. Like just hearing people talk, they didn't talk about Johnny's baseball game. They talked about the job, and they asked how you're doing, but it was surfacey. They didn't ask how are you doing. It was just like, all right, I gotta go. So it just was never a feeling of like getting to know somebody intimately, and I think that's where we've struggled as an industry, but that's where at least the conversation is being had now, and I want to be a part of that. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but we do have some exciting things coming on in that space in this next year. And I want to be not only talking about it, I want to provide some solutions too.
I love because you're right. There's a psychologist named Berne who wrote a book, and he talks about this people and how they can be surfacey, be types of conversations and interactions, to see who has the sadder life, for his head, and I think it's worth looking at. But I love inviting the conversation because you and learning that you were doing to talking post that interview, I saw your genuine passion for
Mhm.
mental health. Some people that can be a triggering phrase, but community itself is the heal ointment for it. What is there's another psychologist called Alfred Adler that talks about anytime you exhibit behavior, there's something you should be aware of in yourself that rectifies as soon as possible. It's not about its rest and repose, but antisocial behavior. And so and I, for example, of my own going on, my first thing was to withdraw, right? But that
Yeah.
lean into your network and all that, and you just have lucky that you called me to talk to me then. So I think it's powerful. So for me, why would you say for you? Am I jumping to conclusions here, or is that
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a personal component to it as well. Like I'm, hearing the industry component and me be creating a construction network. That's step one. Step two is I have family mental health issues all around us. Like I lost a brother-in-law a week before the pandemic hit to suicide. So that rocked our world. And then, dealing with my
man?
own anxiety and then my wife's depression and kids, things popping up. You're like, dang, this is all around me, man. I can't, there's no ignoring it for me, but it also is. A marching order for me at U.S. Construction Zone and the people that I come in contact with is like I'm here to talk if I'm here to listen if you want to talk, and I want to be the person that is open to doing that. And I know that is lip service, but I know that for me, that's what can save somebody is being the one to talk to them and being the one to help. And I want to do that for somebody. I haven't done it yet personally, but I want to be the one that can potentially do that because it's just like I feel like, hey, I'm going to honor Tim this way by you know, by trying to help somebody else. And otherwise, I could just be a recluse and just, really sit in this fear that I have with mental health and just let it take over my life, or I can be part of the action part. And I'm choosing the latter.
You're so there, man. I remember interviewing somebody who talked about this guy had actually uh, left an apartment that said, if anyone talks to me today, end it.
Oh,
If anyone, just one person to the world, just to see if someone would talk to him, and no one did. And so what you're saying, what you're doing, we literally never know. Anytime my hands
mm,
down, I don't care if it derails my entire day, and I'm going to talk to them. So I think, but also your work ethic and what you're building is in the right place because we haven't really gone too far into it, but the industry, especially the construction, got some skeletons in his closet. I can't imagine people are quite a few levels high. They're kind of think about all the bad things that are happening as they're 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 feet in the air. Sometimes it's like a real thing. We put these people up there, and it's like others.
yeah, no, there's some. You're right about the skeletons issue. I think that the industry itself is at a crossroads in many ways, and I think that this mental health thing is one of them. In that we need to change the conversation. We need to treat our staff differently. We need to treat. We're still a people industry. We're full of people. Okay, that doesn't. So we have to treat them better. We've had a diversity, equity, inclusion problem for obviously since its existence. So that's a dirty little skeleton. But again, we're talking about it now. When I was growing up, this none of this stuff was uttered, not one time.
Yeah,
So sometimes, yeah, we're a little late to the game in a lot of these things, and that is a dirty little secret. But we're talking about it, and there are things that are being done about it, and there's improvements, and the stats show it. But it's still like we're so far behind. Like we might as well be in the 50s. You know what I mean? Like it's just that's how crazy it is. So yeah, there's a lot of dirty little secrets that I prefer to talk about those things on my podcast, on my live show, and like having people like you, just introspective people, thoughtful people that look maybe beyond the norm. Just like you talked about in your book a lot. It's like you want to get beyond all those things and I think for me, that's what I like to ingest personally. And so I was like, hey, I can't have a podcast about sales. I have to go
right.
deeper than that because that's who I am. And there are already people who do that and they do a great job and they do better than I could. So why would I just recreate that podcast? I want to actually get to that second level of problems.
I one of the first podcasts I ever did was with C, and he had something. I think it was like it's called something along those lines. I'll have to correct myself later. Ask for forgiveness, but basically, when I asked him about, he said to himself, I couldn't find the show I wanted. Someone does it better than me, then I'll just listen. And so
Yeah.
so I think your heart is in the right man. And given with that being, there's 5, 10 years from now, time is gonna you're pushing the conversation forward. But where do you see zones standing in 5 years, let's say?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I want it to be a one-stop shop for construction. I want it to be where executives go to not only connect, but to be pointed in the right direction. I want to create the references and resources and you know, whether you need to shop for something that you need in construction, or whether you need to talk to somebody, or whether you need to be put in touch with an educational course, or a mental health app, or a mental health professional. Like, I want that to be a place people will, oh yeah, I need to go check US Construction Zone. They'll be able to point me in the right direction. I'm not going to create any of it, none of it, because I can only do one thing, right? And our team does not trying to major in all of those things. We're just trying to like find those great people who are already existing or already doing it well, and then partner with them and say, hey, here's how I can help point my members to you guys, and people that come to our website and ingest our content. I'm going to tell them where to go. So it's like I'm not trying to create anything really. I'm just trying to create a reference point for my people in the industry, and so whatever that looks like. But I mean, the bottom line is I got to be flexible, right? I got to be willing to pivot. I got to check my ego at the door. And this isn't my baby. I want it to be the industry's baby. So if they tell me they need something, or if, and I get told by Zoom calls, I get told like, hey, this is where I'm struggling. And I make a mental note and go, all right, well, I guess that needs to go in that direction. And so like, I think they'll tell me, and I want to be able to listen and change as I need to change. But bottom line is I'm here to stay, man. I want to be a voice in construction, and I'm finding my voice, and I want it to be the right one. I want it to be on the right side of things, and so I'll stumble, but I'm here to stay.
I just love that your stance on things opposite of what most business owners do, right? Most business owners end by the bottom line, which is important, right? But you have a that's the most important thing, is that your metrics, the dollars in the bank, it's also how many impacting, right? Like genuinely,
Yeah.
and be someone will build a construction business and go, okay, our innovated or made 65 new homes, and
Right.
and they now have a beautiful home, but your metrics a little different than that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. I learned from my dad at a young age that you get what you give in life, and like I think if I can give more than I can get, then I'll get it back, and I get it back in a lot of ways right now. It's not always financially, but it's typically, in connections and networking, people meeting people like yourself, and being connected with other people, and going like, man, I feel like I actually have a network now. Where before, like, you have a LinkedIn and you have over 500 connections. Who gives a shit? Now I actually have people that I can rely on. I could call them, I could text them, and they're there for me. And I feel like that's something that is irreplaceable, because I feel like, let's say something happened to me, or my business blew up in my face. Let's say 3 generations and closes doors. I have a lot of people who would hire me. I would have a lot of people that would be willing to help me. And that's different. That's me putting myself out there, and them seeing me and saying like, hey, I'd hire you. That's a network. And I don't think I've had that before. And that now, the first couple of years of kind of creating that, you're like, okay, that's what it is. That's what it is. And it's a kind of an overused word, I think, a lot of times. But I think when you can feel that in your heart, that, hey, some people got my back and I got theirs, then that's what you're cooking with fire.
Hey, just a great conversation. And this isn't the first time we talk every day yet, man, but I feel it. And I've done 2,000 of these. Like, your heart, you put it all out there, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it, Philip. I appreciate you being here. I know you've had some hiccups with the technology and life as well. So I just appreciate you being here. Man, this is I enjoy chopping it up, and especially with people that also have a similar heart and desire that I do, and to kind of see your life personally move on, but the people around you to move forward. And so I appreciate you being here. I want to let you people know in the chat that the link to the book is in there. Let's try to sell a couple more copies of this to get some of that hard-earned money back that he spent making that book. And it's a great book, great read. And yes, Philip, we'll stay in touch. We'll find some more ways to collaborate. And for all those listening to this, if you have some questions for Philip, what's the best way to get a hold of you if they have some questions or want to learn more from you?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I outsource that. I don't have a assistant for my LinkedIn.
Okay.
Social media in general, you can outsource a lot of things for actual posting and such,
Yeah.
but your actual comment actions with people has to be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has to be
Right
you.
on, man. Well, thank you so much. Cheers to 2023. Happy New Year. Hopefully, we both get to some improving things in life, and I think that I'll be there to help you if you need me, and I know you will, vice versa, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Thanks again. Thanks again, Phil, for being here.
Cheers.
All right. Thank you guys for kind of wading through some of that. I know there was some technical challenges there. I appreciate you hanging on till the end, and you know, I I'm just left with a feeling of being very blessed to have such a cool group of people. I have a lot of people that tune in every month to Construction Executives Live, and I want to say thank you to you guys. Happy New Year! And I know that you have a lot you could do in your hour, especially in construction. There's a lot going on. There's it's a lot of fires to put out, but you guys chose to be here today, and I I hope to be able to talk with you personally a little bit more this year, maybe even meet in person soon. So thanks again for tuning in to Construction Executives Live. I am your host, Jeremy Owens. See you next time.